Welcome to the MS Dev Show, episode number 203. This week we talk with Josh Holmes about the latest in PWA and what Microsoft and other companies are doing, hacking vending machines, and we salivate over the new Dell 49-inch monitors.
Raygun gives you complete visibility on errors, crashes, and performance problems affecting your end users. Replicate issues in seconds rather than digging through log files or having to rely on users to report errors or crashes. Raygun gives you a window into how users are really experiencing your software applications. Check it out today at raygun.com.
This week we have Josh Holmes, Director of Web Apps and Frameworks on the Edge team. What the heck does that mean, Josh?
That's a great question there, Jason. First of all, the Edge team, this is the browser team, not the...
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, so you and I have worked together on IoT Edge stuff in the past. But no, this is not that. This is the browser. And so... when you think about the browser, underneath the browser, there is a rendering engine, there's a JavaScript engine, there's a DOM parser, there's all that other goo that makes the web platform. On top of that, there's an application built called the browser, right? Mm-hmm. And in our case, it's Edge, right? But there are 2 million plus applications in the world that are built on top of that web platform stack.
Yeah.
And so all of those guys, all 2 million plus of those are using the technology that my team is creating through the web view, through WWA host, through et cetera. And so if you want access to those things and incorporate them into your application, you're building on top of my team's technology. So the simplest case is there's a ton of applications out there that monetize through ads. And so you'll have an application up and you'll have a little ad banner. Well, that's web. It's HTML, JavaScript these days. And so that's the simplest case. On the other end of the spectrum is if you ever use Office. I'm assuming that you guys have used Office in the past.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, I've heard of it. When Office uses the web view in 32 places throughout Office. And that's everything from when you read an email, it's actually HTML, JavaScript content. Or HTML, CSS mostly, but their entire extensibility model. So how you write extensions to Office is all actually built on top of WebView,
which is super cool.
Yeah, exactly. And so because those exact same extensions work if you're on their website, the Office web. Office 365, and it also works in the desktop client as well because they're using exactly the same technology, same rendering engine, same JavaScript engine, etc. on both.
Exactly. Cool. Yeah, that's such a good point that the browser itself is like such a thin layer. Like that's almost the easy part.
Yeah, exactly.
There's probably like one dev, and they're like working on the UI and. It's a frame, obviously there's, I'm probably, there's probably a whole team now that's like, oh, you jerk. But, I realize there's like the bookmark system and all that other stuff, but really like the part that I feel like given enough time, I could code that up. The rendering engine, I mean, that's gotta be like tens of thousands of, dev hours, and the amount of work and effort and intelligence that goes into that just has to be astounding.
Right. So, we actually, one of the interesting parts about the timing on my move over was when I first moved over to the Edge team, I actually moved to the web platform team. And so the web platform team was about 170, 180 people. And then we were merged with the Saga team, which is actually they're the ones who build the browser app on top of the web platform.
Like I was going to call it the Chrome, but that's probably confusing.
that is confusing. Yes. And so, and I started out, explaining my new role as, think of the browser without the Chrome. Wait, no, dang it.
Wait, but that actually makes sense. Imagine a world without Chrome.
Yeah. So, but anyways, the browser team, the Saga team, that was about 150 to 200 people. Plus, there's another team that got incorporated in. So the browser the team that I joined, which was about 180-ish people, is now 600.
Wow.
And so, it's been a tumultuous and interesting time over here, but it's the first time since the very, very early IE days where we have the input team, we've got the Saga, the browser app team, the web platform team, the JavaScript engine team. All of those teams are all under one roof.
That
Because for
makes
a very,
sense.
very long time, the JavaScript team was actually under
Mm.
DevDiv,
Okay.
and actually managed by the Visual Studio team.
Yeah.
So it was separate from the browser, and so but we've actually combined all those teams up underneath one team now. So very, very exciting time to be over here, as we're taking on some really, really big challenges.
Cool. Well, that makes logical sense. So that was a quick intro. So, Carl, no, it's fine. It's great having you back on. So, Carl, you want to talk about Milwaukee Code Camp real quick?
Yeah, so on Saturday, November 10th, there's going to be another Milwaukee Code Camp if you're in the southern Wisconsin area. And just like to remind people, hey, if you want to attend, that's great. If you think you might want to speak, this is a great opportunity, like kind of like a low stress way to get into public speaking. I know several people do it every year. It's a big enough area or a big enough conference that Code Camp that there's a fair amount of people that attend. But if you're nervous about a lot of people seeing you, you might not have to worry about a lot of people overstressing you if you're there for a speaker. And if you work for a company that might have a little bit of extra money, I know Milwaukee Code Camp is always looking for more sponsors.
So a low attendance event. Got it.
I wouldn't say low, but
No, it's a smaller regional conference. So, are you going to be speaking
precisely.
there?
I won't be speaking, but I will likely be there.
Okay. Okay.
So
I
you
should
should come.
really.
Yeah, because you're even
Yeah.
closer than me.
Yeah, exactly. So I will try to make it there. It actually is on my calendar, and my son was actually interested in going, so I would go just for him.
Well, in that case, if some of your kids go, that would make it easier to rope my kids to go.
Well,
We
one of
can
my
bloat
kids.
the attendance.
Yeah. Okay, let's see here. Let's jump into the news because we have some really cool stories. Like this one, this first one here. MIT plans college for artificial intelligence, and they want to spend $1 billion. $1
What?
billion dollars.
I think the cool thing, other than the money about this, is they're talking about this is going to fund 50 professors. And that's just huge. 50 professors
Yeah.
focusing entirely on AI.
Yeah.
And not to mention that that's also includes money to staff undergraduates and building.
Yeah.
I think year 2020 or 2022, they will all move into their own building as well. So there's going to
That's
be
cool.
an AI building with 50 professors. And if that's something that you, you know you, we can see that this is AI is just getting injected everywhere nowadays
Mhm.
and we need more and more people who understand this because it's not something you can, you know, learn JavaScript in a weekend. You're not going to do AI in a weekend.
Yeah, and then the article mentions too that they are going to, like the AI portions are actually going to affect other classes. Like they're going to try to figure out how to apply to other classes, which I think is pretty cool. Should we move on here? Twitter under formal investigation for how it tracks users in the GDPR era.
Yeah, there was this guy in Ireland, and he did an information request, as is required under GDPR, to
Yep.
Twitter just to ask, like, "Hey, how is my data being used?" And they responded, "We're not going to tell you." So, so
Okay.
he went. So he went to the local regulators. I don't have the up directly, so otherwise I would look real quick what department it was. But he made a complaint, an official complaint, and now there's some official litigation that could be the very first GDPR lawsuit that there is.
Okay. I think this is probably a good use for it. I mean, I think everybody was concerned when GDPR, whenever that was first put into effect, that it would sort of get misused. I mean, like you could like legitimately just kind of make like a small mistake and and really get penalized like super heavily for it. Even when it's not meant to be malicious or whatever. But in this case, like if they were just like, hey, buzz off, we're not going to tell you. Like that's just not right. I mean, there's a reason that GDPR exists for privacy and for this idea that you own your own data. So I'm glad that there's basically a process that's being followed here.
Yeah.
I think Josh disappeared, so we will try to resummon. Oh, there he's been summoned again. He's back.
Sorry, I'm having a lot of problems with Skype, the UWP app, and so I just went and downloaded the desktop application and
Ah, there you go.
waited for a crash. And when it crashed, I launched the desktop application instead of the
There you
UWP
go.
app.
There you go. No problem. We will just keep on trucking. And then this next article, I don't know, Josh, if you had enough time to look at this one, but this was awesome. But it's how I hacked modern vending machines. And so I was kind of on the edge of my seat with this whole story because I love how he walks through how he hacked. It's basically they use an app that you put credits onto, and then you can use that app. You hold it up to the vending machine, and then it will dispense your food or drink of choice. And basically, he walks through and how he hacked this application. Basically, like decompiling the APK, and then ultimately finding an encrypted database. But he was able to look at the code, so he figured out that the encryption key was the device ID of or the ID of the device. It was actually the IMEI number. So he plugged that in, and boom, he had access to the SQLite database. In which case, he was able to change his 0 balance to a 999 balance, and then basically have full access to just take whatever food he wanted out of there. Now he submitted it to them. This was all on the up and up. I don't know. He probably stole a bag of chips or something. Maybe give them back. I don't know. But I just thought this was great because it was just so it was such a simple hack. Like, this is the kind of person where I think if you come up with a new product, you say, hey, take a stab at this, see if you can find like a back door into this, or these challenges where basically you'll pay out money if somebody can find a bug like this, so that you have the white hat hackers that find this and not the bad guys.
Right. Yeah. No, this is security through obfuscation, really, and so
Right.
so you need real security. That's what this proved.
Well, I think that
Who knew?
I think one of the big things he called out is like the code wasn't even obfuscated. He
Right.
just like downloaded the APK and opened it up. Like he said, they made no attempts to do anything securely. So if you would have had introduced a cloud component that would check a balance, and instead of rely on what's on the
Yeah,
local database on
that
the device.
that was my first thing. Is like, I can't believe this thing. I mean, it must be because of offline use,
Yeah.
because the vending machine, it can't always be connected, and the device can't be connected. And that must be why they built their architecture this way. But this is like, my first instinct would be, hey, why don't you go check the cloud, or at least synchronize with the cloud occasionally through the app and through the vending machine. That is really weird to me. Aside from that, since he has basically physical access to the device, like, I'm not quite sure what you could do. Like, obfuscation only obfuscates it, right? Like, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It doesn't necessarily provide more security. It just
Right.
makes it a little bit harder to crack it.
And I think I like certificate-based encryption instead of just using
Yeah.
some connection or encryption based off of in this case the IMEI number.
Yeah.
That was pretty easy to look up, but if you don't have the certificate that's used to sign it, that's a lot harder.
Well,
It,
it's
it
also
is.
his device. I mean, I think you could grab the cert off of there unless it's an encrypted file system and the encryption is, uses hardware keys. But Josh, go ahead. I think you probably understand this better than I do.
Well, the IMEI number is a fixed salt, forever. And
Yeah.
so, whereas if you're using certs, you can change them occasionally.
Yeah.
And so, at a minimum, the cert is going to be the right next step.
Mhm.
But I agree with you, Jason, that having some kind of synchronization with the back end, and doing some double checking, then you can banish IMEI numbers that are abusing the system.
Yeah, like I've heard of, I don't know if this is true. I might have mentioned on the show before. Like, I've heard of like Coinstar machines. It's interesting. You put your cash in there, and if you do like an Amazon gift card, there's no fee because basically they get a kickback from Amazon, right? They get like their referral fees. If you pick a different type of card, if you say like I I don't know what the options are if you want like a check or something. I don't know I can't remember what they are, but there's other, maybe it's like a Best Buy gift card or something. They'll charge you a fee. There's like a, 3% fee or something. I've heard that if you like go behind the machine, back in the days of modems, you could go behind the machine, you'd pick that type, and then right as you push the button, you'd unplug it from the phone line, and it would sit there and basically you'd be like, there's an error, and it would default to like, okay, well, we'll give you this without a fee because we really don't have a way of doing that. Um, so like I understand some of the challenges of connectivity, especially with a vending machine. It's going to be inside, so satellite modem, cellular modem, who knows, if those are even going to be available. So it is an interesting problem, but the fact that they just totally avoided it and just gave up all their security, I guess, yeah. It'll be actually, what should be interesting is to see how they fix this, right? So hopefully we see a new version that's come out and the guy tries to hack it again and he's like, oh, okay, good on you. You figured out a better way to handle this pattern. And then the last story that we have here is pretty quick and simple. I saw this today on Twitter and I was drooling. But Dell launches its first 49-inch ultra-wide monitor with QHD resolution.
So that's 5120 by 1440.
Yeah, that is sweet. Now I know, Josh, you've had like, historically you've had like a giant curved monitor. Yep. So I think you're sort of an expert on these. So what do you think of this thing?
I love the giant curved monitor. In fact, I'll see if I can do this here. If you happen to be watching on YouTube, you can see.
Yeah, I think you have to.
Monitor.
Yeah, turn off your video and turn it back on because you haven't moved in like 10 minutes.
Oh, okay, fun times. Well,
but if you go to the show notes and click on the articles that we'll have posted, the mspoweruser.com is the article that we have, and they show one stacked on top of another, and it just looks amazing. But it does say that the price is MSRP $1,599 US.
Oh, what are you going to bring me down, Carl?
So that would be $3,200 for that amazing display before the mount.
Plus, yeah, I was going to say probably like a $600 mount. Good luck finding a mount like that too. But it is MSRP, so you can probably be out the door on the whole setup for $3,000.
Yeah,
if you catch them on sale.
When's it going to be on zones, Jason?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Any luck with your video there, Josh?
Nope. Skype is not being friendly. It is really complaining at me over here.
Okay.
Anyways, long story short, I've got one of the wide monitors that I actually do my work on, and I usually have Outlook pinned in one and Visual Studio pinned in the other one, and then I've got a vertical monitor, which is a normal size monitor, but I've got it tilted vertical that I use for Teams and any other things that are long reading.
Okay, yeah.
So anyway, yeah, it's I like my monitor setup, and the wide monitors are awesome. They really are.
Yeah, and I do recommend, like, you probably have I've seen your curved monitor and it looks good from all different angles. I have, I wanted 4K monitors. Of course, they bought me, the work bought me like the cheapest thing humanly possible. And I can't complain because I do have two 4K monitors, but they're Asus monitors. And the challenge with them is like, if I, top to bottom when they're in landscape mode, if I tilt them, like the actual like viewing angle is like pretty crazy bad. So I did try putting them in vertical mode the one day, and it was pretty unbearable because like literally the top of the page was sort of a different color than the bottom of the page, because the difference in viewing angle, because they're huge too. They're like 28-inch monitors. Yeah. So make sure this is something, you're staring at for, 8+ hours a day. So I'd recommend not skimping on. I bet you this Dell Ultra Sharp, though, they usually do a pretty good job. And the fact that it is so wide, I'm guessing they really paid a lot of attention to the viewing angle. So I think this will actually be an interesting monitor if if it's in your budget. And I will also say that, monitors are this thing that you can get away with buying only once every, 5 years. Pretty easily if you buy a really good one. So, that's something to consider too. You sort of amortize it over that amount of time. You spend $2,000 on like a desktop computer, and then, you cheap out and you buy like a $250 monitor. And it seemed kind of silly at that point.
Yep.
I wish they had. Yeah, I wonder if OLED is going to start making its way into desktop computers. Probably not anytime soon, but I sure do love OLED screens on my eyes. So, okay, well, let's jump into PWA talk because that's why we have you here, Josh. And I will just sort of remind everybody we had quite a few episodes ago. It was basically a year ago. We had Jeff Berthoft on, and he did talk about PWA, and PWA was like really starting to get popular. I really heard them people start talking about them in mainstream. So I feel like we've had a lot of time, a fair amount of time has gone by. Plus, Microsoft is doing a whole bunch of interesting things in this space. So that's why we got Josh here to simplify it for us. So I think we should talk. People who haven't heard that episode and don't feel like they're lazy and they feel like not going back and listening to that episode, that's fine. So Josh, if you want to give us like just a quick overview of what is PWA, what do we mean when we're talking about that?
Well, so first of all,
Hmm.
so let's break down the acronym. So
Sure.
it's Progressive Web App. We'll start with the center word, which is web. For the developer, it's web. So they are building a website, and typically, what we encourage people to do when they're building a PWA is start by building a great single page app. And you don't have to be. It doesn't have to be a single page, but that tip tends to work out really well. There's lots of great frameworks out there to do that in. My preference is a combination of React with TypeScript. Allows
Mm.
me to work nicely in TypeScript with the object-oriented programming language. And yet the React side gives me that componentized front end that I really really like. So you start by building a highly performant web site, and then we want to be able to distribute that across all of the different platforms. And so the way that you do that is fairly simple. There's a website that Jeff Berthoff's team actually built called PWA Builder. And what that will do is you plug in the URL to your website, and it will go create the wrappers that you can deliver to the iOS store, the Android store, the Windows store, or if you're on any other platform, then you can actually do an install from browser. And so both Chrome and Firefox support install from browser, and you can just install it right there. So to the developer, it feels and looks and smells like a website, and to the user, it feels and smells and looks like a app.
Mhm.
And so the way this is done is you have your application, and then you start adding a few extra components to it. The two hardcore requirements are that you are running over HTTPS and that you have a manifest. And so there's a file called the manifest.json. So it's a little JSON file, and really all that does is it tells the platform how to install you. And how to run you. And so it includes things like links to the icons that you want to use as the shortcut.
Mhm.
The short name that you want to show up in searches and in the menus and that kind of stuff. Very very simple, basic kind of stuff. The other one that's very important is the other attribute in the manifest file is do you want to be running? How much of the exterior of the browser do you want to see? Do you want it to launch and run like it's a pinned website, and so it's actually running in the browser in full context with the menus and the tabs and all that other stuff? Or do you want a minimal UI where you are providing all the navigation and it looks and feels and smells exactly like a desktop application? So those are the two extremes, and there's gradations in between those. So that's in the manifest. And then the next big thing that you can add is a service worker. And this is it's not a hardcore requirement, but it's a strongly recommended. But I actually recommend this for websites in general today, because if your browser supports Service Worker, which all of the modern browsers do, then there are a lot of benefits you can get from having a Service Worker implementation. If your browser does not support Service Worker, that's okay. You'll just ignore it, and the rest of your code will operate as if it's a website. Once you insert the service worker, it's got a couple of methods that are really, really important. One of them is, it actually acts as a proxy. So when you request a web page, then what it's going to do is your service worker actually gets that request and is able to make a decision and say, do I want to look in the cache first? Do I want to go online and get it online? What do I want to do? And so it will, make a decision there. If your browser does not support Service Worker, that exact same network request is just going to go to the network and not look in the cache first. So you'll get benefits from having the Service Worker, but it doesn't cripple your application if it doesn't support it.
So while
Yeah.
you were talking, I actually used this PWA builder.
Yeah.
So this is crazy because I went in here and I said, generate manifest, and like it did a great job. It had like all the icons and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And then build service worker, and it was talking about the options that you mentioned where it can do like the caching and everything. It literally gave me all the code and downloaded that. And then I said publish, and then it said, oh yeah, here you go, download, and it has like the whole thing. So there we go. I've now developed a PWA app.
So what we
There you
should
go.
do is we should add this to
It's
our
that
static
simple.
website,
Yeah.
and then now we can turn that into a PWA.
Yeah, because it looks like I have to upload. There's like a manifest. I see generation info. I don't know if that's necessary, but then there's images. So that manifest, I assume, is kind of the key to this whole thing.
Yes. Yeah, you
Okay.
just put the manifest.json, just put that file in the root of wherever you want the application to be.
Okay.
And you put if you have a service worker, which it will generate one for you.
I know.
The PWA builder will.
Yeah.
And you've got a couple of different options there. Do you want it to just fully offline your application, which actually would be really interesting for you guys because I'm going to go get on an airplane. And if I could just bring the MS Dev Show with me on the airplane and it's already downloaded all the content,
Yeah.
rock on, right? And then anyways, you put the service worker in the same place as your manifest, and you're done. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to do anything else. If you are, if you want to submit to the stores, great, go submit to the stores. But the beautiful part is that now, once you've submitted to the store, you're done. You never have to submit to the store again. All you do is you update your website, and it will update the application.
Okay. That is super cool. I like this. I like where this world's going.
Yeah. So one of the things, like this into
So
this month.
other than
Oh, I think Carl was breaking up there. Go ahead, Josh.
At the end of this month, I'm helping with the Seattle Give Camp, and
Mhm.
one of the companies that nonprofits that submitted is they do a promotion of local arts around Seattle. It's called Image Journal, and they submitted that they wanted this whole mobile app to go with their website. And initially, we were looking at it going, "Wow, that's going to be a lot of work," and then it was like, "No, this is a progressive web app." And it turns out that Image Journal is actually a WordPress website. And there's actually already a WordPress plugin called Super PWA that will generate your manifest, generate your service worker. And so,
That's awesome.
we went from this is too much work for a weekend to what are we going to do with the rest of Friday night?
I like that. So that's a great piece of advice, though. Like check whatever platform you're on and see if it already has support for this.
Exactly. Because WordPress already does the different sized icons, already does the short names and the long names, already does a lot of the metadata that you need for the application. And so just let the Super PWA plugin generate your manifest, and you're done. You don't have to think about it.
Very cool. Okay, what were you going to say, Carl?
So other than PWA Builder, what is Microsoft and your team doing in the PWA space?
So if you want to build a PWA that runs on top of Edge HTML and is installable through the store, that's my team. And so the PWA builder will build out the UWP application, which really what that is it's a launcher that points at a URI. And then the rest of that is all my team building out the we call WWA host, which is a I mentioned there's the web platform, and then there is the browser app on top of that. The WWA host is a separate app on top of the web platform that allows you to take advantage of it in your native applications.
Okay. Is there a way for me then to take like, our entire website? I mean, you were talking about the caching earlier, but is there a way today where I can take all that and put that basically in AppX and submit the entire thing to the store with all the content?
There is.
Okay.
It's called a packaged app.
Okay.
And this harkens back to the Windows 8 and 8.1 days, and when you could build your application in HTML, JavaScript, and submit it that way. We're actually recommending against that these days. There's some amount of prepackaged that you can do that is useful, but going with a straight PWA means that it'll work on every platform, and you don't have to think about it.
Oh, that's a good point.
And whereas the packaging up, that was actually a Windows 10, or sorry, Windows 8, 8.1, now Windows 10 only thing. Doesn't work on Android, doesn't work on iOS, doesn't work on Mac, doesn't work on Linux, etc. Whereas PWA, as a set of specifications, there is a browser implementation that works on every single one of those platforms that supports PWA today.
Don't wait for users to report problems. Raygun gives you complete visibility on errors, crashes, and performance problems affecting your end users. Replicate issues in seconds rather than digging through log files or having to rely on users to report errors or crashes. Raygun gives you a window into how users are really experiencing your software applications, supports all major programming languages and platforms, and integrates with your current development workflow tools too. There's a free 14-day trial, and it takes minutes to implement, so start resolving issues in your application and check it out today at raygun.com.
Yeah, so I was going to ask, like, what companies are on board with this? I mean, is Apple sort of being like begrudgingly like pulled into this space, or are they like all on board with this? Because I know, does iOS? I've read that like they support PWA, but I really don't understand what that even means. Like, how do I do a PWA app, or maybe I'm already using them? Do I get them through the store? I don't get that part.
So there is a chance that you're already using them on iOS and Android.
Okay.
And so there's on iOS and Android, there's two different ways to install a PWA. One is to open your favorite browser and click the little dot drop down, and there will be an install if you're on a site that happens to be a PWA. Then you can install it right there, and it will do their normal install. The second is PWA Builder will actually create the wrappers to dump into the Android and the iOS stores. And so, if you go to if you install Twitter on Windows 10 or on Android or on iOS, I believe all three of those now are their PWA. Uber on Windows 10 is PWA.
So you mentioned, so let's just take Twitter just because it's super simple and I want to understand. So when I install Twitter from the iOS App Store, you're saying that's a PWA?
I believe it is now.
Okay. Well, maybe you have an example where you're 100% sure of.
Well, I know for a fact that it is on Windows 10 because my team helped them build it.
Okay.
But I'm not positive if they've already pulled the trigger on making that the application on iOS. And here's the wonderful part: you won't necessarily know.
Well, that was what I was kind of getting at. Like, I want to be, I want you to be like, hey, you've been using this for a while and it's awesome. You don't even know.
and the answer is you probably have. I have a quick list of them on iOS at the moment. But back to your question about what companies, Google and Microsoft are definitely the front runners in championing PWA. We actually started with a thing called HWA, which is a hosted web app. We actually started that many moons ago, long before PWA was a standard. And now we have shifted to, we support the full standards, set of standards that are PWA, because it's not one standard, it's a bunch of little ones all put together under a banner called PWA. But so Google and Microsoft are definitely the front runners. Firefox is very supportive, and then as you aptly put it, Apple is a little begrudgingly pulled into this, but they can't help but support it, as much momentum as there is behind it in the industry.
Exactly.
So how closely have your team and Google's team's been working together? Because I've heard a lot of rumors just saying, yeah, Microsoft and Google are working great together in this area, but there's no other details. So is that true? And if so, how close are you guys collaborating?
We have my team. We've got a bunch of the engineers and PMs on my team are on, and also the PAX team, so Jeff Bershoff's team. We're on somewhere between monthly and quarterly calls with the Google team about whether they're doing and what we're doing, and we're jointly working on what the spec should be.
That's very cool. Yeah, because I mean, it seems like you have every reason to collaborate, and I can see why Apple is kind of the odd man out, because they, they have their precious store, which makes them, all their money, and they just they don't have much of a reason until, it just becomes so popular. Everybody's like, come on, Apple, get on board with this.
Right. Well, and they are. Their concern, and this is a concern across the board when you're submitting through an app store, is that one of the nice parts about the App Store is up front, and with each submission to the App Store, the store team, regardless of which company, gets to evaluate the application, go do testing with it, see if it's doing anything malicious, and so on and so forth. The PWA way of doing things is you submit once and then you update your website, right, and the application just automatically gets those updates, and it bypasses any of the store stuff.
Yeah.
Well, the reality though is that it's running in a browser context.
Yeah.
And so
it's already sandboxed essentially.
It's already running inside of the sandbox. It's already, doing the right things from a security standpoint on that side.
Yeah.
Windows 10 currently, we are allowing access to some of the WinRT runtime underneath, and so there are a few additional security implications on that end of things. But we're working quickly on and hard on what to do about those properly.
Okay, so. And then you mentioned service workers a couple times. I know you talked about it a little bit earlier, but like, really, what is a service worker? Like, what types of things can you do with them?
There's two primary things that you can do with them. One is the network proxy that I talked about briefly,
yeah,
and the second is receiving push notifications. What
Key.
Service Worker does is it is it's running in a separate thread than your render process, and so it can register to receive push notifications, and also it intercepts that network traffic. But it does not have access to, change the DOM or other things that are in the render process. It has to marshal those calls back over to the primary process.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yep.
Cool.
So, what does it take to convert like a well-defined website to a PWA? And in particular, what I think we could use maybe for an example is like the Office apps, because Word and Excel and PowerPoint and Teams have all been on the web for a long time. So, what does that look, and how big of a process is that?
So, if you wanted to simply do an install with a pen, and you got an icon on your desktop that you can double click and bring it up, it's a couple of minutes worth of work. If you wanted to do more, app-like stuff, so you want the push notifications, you want to be able to do offline support, you want to do prefetching of content, etc., then that requires more work.
Yeah, I think the other big piece of this too is like Electron-based apps. They're already. It's kind of funny because they're hosting like Chrome in there, and then they're doing like, they do all this weird stuff, right, to like make an Electron-based app work. And as we know, they suck up a ton of memory and sometimes CPU. So I guess Teams was based in Electron. So like, do you know what it takes to take something that's basically Electron-based and bring that over to a PWA?
Yes.
Okay. You want to tell us?
Electron is Chromium plus V8 plus your application code, right?
Right.
And so the what they do in order to get the Chromium to work. They make a couple of patches to Chromium. They make a couple of patches to Node to make those things communicate better. One of the tough things in Electron is that you can actually run Node modules directly in the render process. Okay, so if you're doing that, then it makes it really hard to convert that over to a PWA.
Yeah.
If your front end,
yeah, because so basically, I just want to stop there for just a second. You're basically mixing, if you're mixing web technologies and sort of like you said, like local node code, which is sort of a different thing. Like they're both JavaScript, but they're different things.
Right.
Then you're kind of a little stuck.
And so
makes sense.
If your application runs in a standard browser by itself, then you can convert it to a PWA relatively simply.
Okay.
If it's an Electron app that is taking advantage of everything that Electron offers, then that becomes harder.
Okay. So Teams runs in a browser.
Yes.
Teams
does run in a browser. Yes, it does.
Seems like they're halfway
yes.
there.
And so the challenge, the other, this is a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing about PWAs is that it's standard web technology, and you can run it on any platform and in any browser.
Yeah.
The downside of that is that you do not have control over which rendering engine or which JavaScript engine, and so on and so forth. And so, if you take a look at Teams, Teams was written originally as an Electron app, and optimized very heavily for V8, which it's a fantastic JavaScript engine.
Yep.
But optimizing for V8 means that you're not optimized for Chakra, and so they can run as a PWA today, but it's just slow on top of Chakra. So
yeah,
they've optimized for a different JavaScript engine.
That makes sense. I always thought of that too. Yeah, if you just go in your browser, right? Like you can use Safari, you can use Chrome, you can use Edge to go to teams.microsoft.com, and like they have to deal with all the crap that's along with that. Like you mentioned, using something like Electron means that it's this known thing, and you can just test it and ship it.
Yes.
Okay. Very cool. But the advantage. And I think that Teams, I think they've, at least like the Windows version so far, has been converted to PWA. I mean, that removes like a lot of complicated layers, right? I mean, okay. That's what I was thinking. I thought it would be a major
advantage. That you're running on top of a platform that's already installed rather than bringing your own platform.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the challenges with Electron is that, the minimum install is like 80 or 90 meg.
Yeah.
And, and the PWA version of that same 90 megabyte install, the PWA version of that is going to be 400K or
right.
Something incredibly small,
right?
And then it's just web content. It's HTML, JavaScript from the web.
Very cool.
So yeah, that makes it a lot easier.
Okay.
So is this starting to be like the promised land where we no longer have to build native applications anymore, or are we kind of just like repeating history where we get close and we never quite get there?
That's a great question, and what I'll say there is that the people that think it is the promised land and they're never going to have to write a native application are wrong. But if you think about it from a reach versus a capabilities and power standpoint, the PWA is going to give you reach. It does not give you deep integration with the operating system. And so, there's Web Bluetooth, which is a standard that Chrome supports, but right now it's the only one that does. So if you need access to Bluetooth, that will work on Chrome, but not on every other platform. If you don't need access to Bluetooth, okay, don't use it. So if your stuff runs on a website, great. If it doesn't, if it needs access to the native platform, then PWA is not for you. Is really, I guess, what I'm trying to say. Yeah,
I'm thinking of like Overcast, which runs on iOS. It's only on iOS. Right. And anytime that Apple adds, some new feature that he can really take advantage of, Marco Arment is the guy who develops that.
Yep.
Like he has that deep level of integration. That seems to me, and he's also doing like a whole bunch of complex audio work. It seems to me like that would be sort of suicide doing that in PWA. But I would also think that 95% of the apps out there, I mean, you mentioned Uber. I mean, it does like location access and maybe like Apple Pay or something. But
But
you know,
those are standard
yeah,
standards today where it's a
exactly.
DOM method to get access to
Yeah,
the location, and the web payment again is a standard today, and
yeah,
that accepts Apple Pay and other things. The But you mentioned the a lot of audio work in the one
yeah.
app. That's actually one of the things where we've seen challenges is when somebody needs a custom protocol, or
Mhm.
they need a custom codec for video or audio, or
Yep.
they need something else much deeper. So for example, Skype, the app that we're using today, would have a hard time being a straight up PWA because they use particular codecs in order to do the solid video. Not that my video
Right.
is working today, but
Bad example.
bad example. Sorry, I realized that about halfway into that discussion. Anyways, but they have custom protocols and codecs that they use to make the video more streamlined for streaming, and not so much for just standard playback.
Mhm.
And so they would have a hard time being a PWA because of that.
Okay. And then are there more like service worker features on the way that are sort of in the near term future
Yeah, so
that you're aware of?
prefetch is one that we're working on right now on the Edge team, is so that you could go prefetch a lot of content.
Okay.
So right now, you'd have to browse to each one of the things. You can get there. You can just create a little spider that's going in the background and going grabbing a bunch of stuff. But prefetch is a standard that will come that will you'll be able to say, here's a list of URIs, go get them.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting because so you can have a JavaScript method that will request it's kind of confusing because you have like your files for your web page, but you're asking for the rendered URL. But I mean, PWA is running in the right context, so you can do that. I don't know. I just have gears turning. That's not a question. Go ahead, Carl.
So going to a real question, how do we go about testing the applications on various platforms? Is it as simple as opening up, Safari on a Mac, or opening up Google Chrome or Edge on Windows, or do we actually have to like really install these on the various combinations that these could be, like like on a Samsung phone versus an Android phone?
Good question. I'll be honest, I'm not actually 100% positive what the right answer is there. So one of the things that's also useful is there's another spec that has come along called WebDriver, and it will simulate client interaction, and so you can do most things from a testing perspective that you would do, by installing and so on with WebDriver. And WebDriver is a standard that works again on almost every platform. I do believe you would want to have a couple of hardware devices, so a couple of different versions of the Android phones just to test and make sure. Also, it'd be useful to test and see, okay, what happens when Chrome is installed as the default browser? What happens when the Samsung browser is installed as the default browser?
Mhm.
So there's you might try a couple of different testing matrices, but in general, if it works in your browser, then it works as a PWA.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you could use there's like the web test functionality that came over with Xamarin, which is now part of VSTS, which is now known as ADO. Um, I'm wondering if you
Renaming
could.
things for the win.
Yeah, I I didn't realize how complicated that was. So I said all of it, but I would think that you could use that because they basically have that team has a giant device library that they allow basically programmatic access to.
Right.
That's probably good because it's just at the end of the day, it's just an app. So as long as I wonder if they have a filter for basically devices that support PWAs. So that'll be an exercise left to the reader, I suppose. And then you mentioned, so any other examples of great PWA apps? You mentioned Twitter, you mentioned Uber, any others?
There's quite a few of them that are pretty awesome, and some of those are submitted to the Microsoft Store. Some of them are not. But if you go to pwa.rocks, rocks is instead of .com, and pwa.rocks,
Okay.
you'll get a list of a bunch of the PWAs that are out there. so somebody's created a one for Wikipedia. There's expense managers. There's mail applications. There's all kinds of different things that are out there on PWA Rocks. Almost all of these are installable on Windows, Android, iOS, etc. Just depends if they've actually submitted them to those particular stores.
I'm playing Web Flap.
yeah, there are some games over
Dang
there,
it.
and so and they will suck your time away. Absolutely.
Yeah. So
But
so how do
Flipboard
I
is
actually
one that's
install?
very useful.
Oh, which one is it?
Flipboard.
Oh yeah, Flipboard.
Yep.
So how do I actually install, like, from? Can I do that from Chrome? Install a PWA then?
If you have Chrome, if you're using Chrome as your default browser,
Yep.
or actually, if you're using Chrome, let me just put it that way.
Yeah.
And you go to a website that is so if you go to m.twitter.com,
Yep.
that's their PWA, and click on the little ... up in the corner, and under more tools, you should see the install Twitter. Okay. If you don't, right now on desktop, it is hidden behind a flag. So if you go to Chrome:/flags,
I'm with you.
go to PWA, or type PWA in the search bar, and you'll see there's desktop PWAs and desktop PWA link capture.
Yep.
Recommend turning both of those to enabled.
Okay. Done.
And then go back and refresh on your mobile.twitter.com.
Yep. It wants to relaunch my browser.
Yep. And you should see the install Twitter there.
Still loading. Okay, so ... more tools. Oh, and I see actually it's not under more tools, it's above it.
Oh, okay,
it says
good.
it says create shortcut, install app. So install. Okay, apparently it's installed.
Yep, and so now you should see, if you just click the Windows button, you should see Twitter as a recently installed application.
Yeah, let's see here. Ah, there it is. Perfect. Oh, cool.
And so that is a PWA. Also,
Yeah.
if you go to the Microsoft Store, so open up the store,
Mm-hmm.
and do a search for Twitter there. Oops. Then what you'll find there is the application that is installable through the Microsoft Store. That is a PWA as well. It's the exact same PWA that you just installed through Chrome.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, so now I just it's kind of funny. Like I've actually been using just more and more likely these days to run these apps through my browser.
Right.
Just because there's no local storage. So yeah, I'm just looking like OneNote Online, create shortcut. Look at that. And now, oh, see, that one's not as good. See, they don't, that one's just like a bookmark. I mean, it just opened.
Right.
OneNote. Okay, I got to submit that as a feature.
Yes. So depending on the application, again, you can pin any website under the
right, and that's what it's doing.
And that's what it's doing. And so, but they haven't done the work yet to make it a PWA by adding a manifest yet, by adding a service worker, and doing that extra legwork to make it a little bit nicer.
Okay, so I wonder. Let me try doing that with Teams then. This is the most exciting portion of the show. Carl, you can answer. You can ask your question while I'm playing.
So I'm going to ask two questions here, and I think you can answer them both at the same time. So is there something that your team is working on that we haven't talked about in PWAs, or is there something that you would like to talk about the future of PWAs?
Yeah. So. I mean, what we're working on that we haven't discussed yet is there is, so we just installed Twitter through Chrome and just installed Twitter through the Microsoft Store. If you run those two side by side, they will look and smell and taste very, very much alike. except that when you try to do like the share 2, the Chrome will pull up Chrome's share 2, whereas the one that was installed through the store will actually pull up the share target in Windows, because it's actually doing a little bit of OS integration stuff. And giving you JavaScript access to call into the Windows share instead of just doing the browser share. So there's that's a little bit nicer, a little bit of an extra feature set. And so we're looking for what are those types of things that developers actually want to do that would not be extra work for the developer, that will enhance the user's experience. Because we still want this to be, the developer looks at it like a website, and the user looks at it like an app. And so we're looking at what are those things, and making sure that we provide great support for those things.
Yeah, just look. So yeah, Teams doesn't support it yet either, and they were
Nope.
going to be doing PWA stuff. I'm just kind of surprised. Yeah, Twitter does a good job, because like whenever I click on it, it opens in like its own window, right?
Yep.
So even if I like close my browser, it will stay running. And then like you said, they can be using service workers and things like that. Teams does not appear to have that behavior,
They do not yet, no.
unfortunately. Okay, well, get on that. I knew you're just waiting for that, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Anything else that we didn't ask that you wanted to make sure you mentioned?
So I mentioned the Seattle Give Camp. Anybody who's based in Seattle would love to see you there. SeattleGiveCamp.org. In short, that is a multi-company hackfest for nonprofits. And so we have currently 13 nonprofits that are signed up. And we're always looking for more help. Some of those things are simple, website facelifts. And other things are, they've got one of the nonprofits has got, thousands of little spreadsheets and access databases and so on, and they need all that one time ETL'd into a centralized database.
Okay.
So there's varying levels of technical stuff that would need to be done.
Yeah.
SeattleGiveCamp.org for
Cool.
all the details and sign up.
Yeah, my trick for converting from like Excel into SQL, I don't know if you've ever done this, Josh, is to actually write a formula that builds the insert statement into another column.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've ever done that, but that's a slick trick.
Yeah.
And then you just copy those, and then you just paste it into Management Studio and hit execute, and it inserts all the records for you.
So it sounds like we need you at the Seattle Gift Camp so that you can show us that trick.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you knew this, but I actually moved away from Seattle.
Oh, I didn't know that. No, I didn't know that.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. I'm back in Wisconsin.
Okay, well, congratulations.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
So the non-Seattle based thing that I want to promote is osmihelp.org. So that is open sourcing mental illness and help for that. And so the short version is that our profession, our industry, there are a lot of people who are afflicted with various mental illnesses. Some of that is deep, dark depression. And others are, things like I have ADD, and I'm wildly ADD, and it requires a lot of focus and a lot of effort, and my brain works differently than neurotypical people, and that's okay. And so open sourcing mental illness is starting that conversation and removing the stigmas from the from the mental illnesses. It's a nonprofit and a cause that I support greatly.
Okay.
So
these are some great causes. Yeah.
And then lastly, feel free to reach out to me at Josh Holmes on Twitter. So just Josh Holmes.
Perfect.
Try to stay simple and
cool. And then we have I have a quick app of the week, and then we can wrap this up. So. And I don't know if you've ever used this, Josh, but basically I set up Pi-hole. Have you heard of this project?
I've not, no.
Yeah, so this is, it's basically, they call it a black hole for internet advertisements. But basically, you can install ad block in your browser. Well, what this is actually, essentially, for the sake of, simplifying this, is a DNS server that you set up. It was designed to be set up on a Raspberry Pi. So you can buy a very inexpensive Raspberry Pi for like $35. You install this on there, and it's essentially a local DNS server. But what it does is if it gets a DNS request for a domain that is actually an ad domain, I'm actually not sure what response it gives back, but basically it gives back like a non-existent or bogus response. And it essentially provides you like in your entire house then with ad blocking. And you say like, oh well, why would I want this? Because I've actually had ad block turned off for a couple of weeks. I'm not that susceptible to seeing them, so it didn't really bother me. There are some on mobile that are really intrusive, but I think the reason is, let me see if I can get you my number here. I've been running this only for like, I don't know, 6 hours. So let me pull up. It has a nice dashboard that you can log into. It's pi.hole because it's the DNS provider, right?
Pi dash hole.
Yeah. No, it's pi.hole. No, I'm saying the web, the actual website you go to. Right.
Get it.
Yeah, I'll get to that.
Pi-hole.net.
Right, exactly. But anyway, so like in the last 6 hours, my computer, the devices in my house have made 5,420 queries. That's across 8 different clients. My DHCP has not handed out this new DNS server to every client in my house yet. Queries blocked 1,372, which is 25.3%. So literally a quarter of all the requests made in my house were for ads.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is blocking all of that, which I think is great from a web page performance standpoint. The non-obtrusive ads, like if you go to MS Dev Show, like we have an ad on our page, but we serve it first party. It's just an image, just like any other. It's non-obtrusive, and you can click on it and it takes you over to Raygun. That one is not blocked at all. So I do still occasionally see ads with this thing, but it's really the ads that are not trying to be too annoying. So I think this is pretty neat, and actually speeds up your DNS requests as well. So I think it's a really neat thing. I actually have it installed in Hyper-V on a Windows machine. I did not install on a Raspberry Pi, but you can install it basically on any Linux machine through a curl command, or they actually have a Docker image for it as well. So I just think it's kind of neat. Something that you might want to check out. And like Carl said, it's at pi-hole.net.
Yes.
Perfect. And it's one line in you to install it. And then Josh, there's a game that we play on the show. If I can find the cards here, I got a whole stack of them here. So I will ask you a question. Okay, here we go. Would you rather fall down 20 wooden steps by accident or fall down 40 concrete steps by accident, but while wearing a football helmet, knee pads, elbow pads, and wrist guards?
So would I rather fall down
20
wooden steps?
Yep.
Or get some gear on and fall down 40 concrete steps?
Yep.
Tough decision there. Obviously prefer to keep my balance. However,
oh, you've outsmarted the game.
Prefer to, but you did say on accident, so
yeah.
I guess I would have to go down the wooden steps because
Really?
the concrete steps would. There's more than just helmet, elbows, and knees.
That's true. That's true. Because you can still break your arm or whatever.
Yes, there's still a lot more painful things that can happen there. I don't know.
Huh. Well, it's interesting because I was thinking, like, I was thinking no contest. I was thinking the 40 concrete steps. But the fact that you picked the 20 wooden steps has me second guessing myself. But
I don't know. I'm also weird, so
because you're right. Like you could hit, here, but I feel like I could just like, I don't know, what is that, like an armadillo or maybe maybe like a turtle. I could switch to turtle mode, with all the gear on. So what would you pick, Carl?
I would have to agree with Josh. I mean, especially as you get older, those kinds of things definitely would affect you more and keep you out longer.
Yeah, but I like how you just like 20 wooden steps, like piece of cake.
No. I'm assuming that would
hurt. Absolutely. Okay, so I know you mentioned a whole bunch of great causes. We'll include those in the show notes. But if people are looking for you, where can they find you?
So joshholmes.com.
Okay.
Josh Holmes on
Pretty
Twitter.
Easy. Yep.
Or you can find me at Josh Holmes Photography on Instagram.
Okay.
Or feel free to drop me an email at josh.holmes@microsoft.com.
Okay. And Holmes is Holmes.
Just like Sherlock.
Yep, exactly. Sherlock's brother, Josh. Perfect. And Carl, where can people find you
You can find me on Twitter at Carl Schweitzer.
And you can find me on Twitter at twitter.com/ytechie. So Josh, thank you so much for coming on here and talking about PWA and all the great stuff going on in that space.
It's an exciting